Hey, hey, it's your girl Kyla Coleman, aka Natural Legalista. Welcome back to my zone where we're breaking down stories from the headlines with a twist, which is just humor and gossip usually. So I'm excited to jump into today's story. Phil, you excited too?
Oh man, this is a classic.
Man, listen. So today's topic is what happened to America's baby? Unpacking JonBenet Ramsey. Whew.
Man, that was like 96.
Yeah, just kind of looking at her picture is really bringing up some memories because we were around the same age. So
Yeah.
man,
Wait, she would be our age?
yeah. Well, she would be, well, I'm 33, so she would be a couple
Yeah.
years younger than us. She'd be like 30, 31.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sad.
Crazy, but I am really excited to jump into this because we have an expert who's going to be talking to us today about this case. But before we jump into it, you guys already know I always give a self-care tip, and my self-care tip of the week is to create a good skincare routine, y'all. Go ahead and invest in that facial steamer. Go ahead and go get you some facials if you can get them. Or if you're like me, you just like to do your own facials, go get a $2.99 little facial mask from Target.
I had to take your advice this morning because one thing about black people is that we ashy when we get out of the shower.
Yes.
So I had to make sure I got my bottle of lotion, and I had to rub my elbows and my hands. And that's one thing that I forget. That's the one self-care thing that I always forget until I'm already out of the house.
Oh my God. I can't even talk about anybody because that's me too.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you're not ashy today because I definitely would have said something about it.
Good.
But man, so yeah, just take care of your skin. Get a good skincare routine specifically for your face too, since that's the thing that everybody is really looking at these days with Zoom and everything. So, yep. So now I'm gonna jump into the introduction of our guest today, who is Steph Watts. He is known as the voice for the missing, murdered, and misunderstood. Step started out in Court TV. He produced shows for them. He's also produced Nancy Grace's show. That's a badass picture right there of him.
I know.
For those that are listening
That's
that
an-
can't see,
That's an album cover. It looks like-
exactly. For people who are listening that can't see, Step is like dressed down in a leather jacket. It's a crime scene tape like behind him, and he's what is that, like a parking garage or something?
That's what it looks like.
Oh my gosh. But he has produced programming for A&E, True TV, Bravo, E, CBS, Fox. It's just a whole bunch. His collection is very extensive at this point. But let me go ahead and put him on the screen now so we
What
can
a
see who we're
resume.
talking about.
Steph.
Yeah.
Damn, you guys blew me up. That was a good Thank you for that.
Who is your photographer, man? That was dope.
Yeah, she's a good friend of mine, Luciana Pampalone. She's here based in New York here, actually. She's bad. It's funny that it's just a parking garage. I live in the Bronx, so it's just like a parking garage across the street, you know. You're like,
I
oh,
thought it looked like a parking garage.
it
Yeah.
was. You called it out. Yeah, it was there. And that tape was actually up there. That like do not enter tape.
Oh
So
wait,
we-
you didn't put that there? That wasn't
No,
the plan?
we
Oh
did
man.
not.
So
I
you
swear.
were at an active crime scene.
That was, yeah, who
Okay.
knows what was happening in there. I think it was just do not cross. I don't know if it was actually, there was probably somebody murdered in there at some point. I'm sure.
Yeah, it looked like it.
Yeah.
Man, nonetheless, it was a great background. So, Steph,
Well,
I see
thank
that
you very much.
yeah, I
Thank
see you have some good stuff coming up. You actually
Yeah.
just started another podcast, correct?
I started my first podcast, actually. I've never done one before. And, I think it came out of, it's interesting, that quiet period that we were all forced to sit still during the pandemic. I'm like, what do I want to do? And 5 years ago, I produced the #1 special on ID, solving, it was for American Murder Mysteries, JonBenet. I did 3 hours, 20, and that was the 20th anniversary. So I'm
Wow.
sitting here during pandemic thinking, well, we're now going to be at the 25th anniversary, and just like nobody was paying attention because clearly the world was coming to an end and there was
Yeah.
more important things to worry about. Michelle, one of my partners in Case by Case, I'm partnered with police detective Michelle Woods, pictured in the center, and homicide prosecutor Jared Ferrantino, who organically are two of my best friends. We just have worked on cases together. Michelle was featured in the original ID special. She was actually the only person that was in my special for ID that wasn't directly related to the case. But Michelle's
Oh, wow.
specialty, she's an interrogation expert, and she reviewed all the footage of Burke Ramsey's interviews and the parents' interviews and really gave some great insight, oftentimes in real investigations, detectives, they bring in new detectives to, with a fresh perspective. That said, after the show aired, as we get, as you probably know, millions of people reaching out to us on Twitter, and half of them are crazy, not gonna lie. But this one particular guy named Dale, Michelle and I vetted him, and it turned out that Dale was a firefighter first responder who arrived at the Ramsey home as the body was being
Oh
discovered.
my
And
goodness.
he, I won't give away too much, but he was questioned by police and told never to speak about what he saw inside that house. Well, we have
What?
him, and we've built the entire podcast around Michelle's. He would only talk to Michelle because he
Mm.
saw her on the show. Checked out that yes, she is an active detective with Chicago Police Department. She's now a sergeant, actually, and he felt comfortable with her. And that's really, as you know, in our business, that's what it takes a lot. It's just like I'm comfortable telling this person my story. And so the phone call lasted about an hour and a half, and we've built the entire podcast around her call with Dale because what he reveals is pretty shocking,
I
and
got
Wow.
it's
Yeah.
there's some insight into the. It really, I think, changes the trajectory of this case.
And you know
And
what? From doing research about this case, I did think that it was some fishiness going on with the police department based on how they handled it. So
mhm.
I don't know how much you can give away, but I feel like this is going to be a good teaser for your podcast.
Yeah. So what's the name of it again, and when is it coming out?
The podcast is called Case by Case, and our premise is that the police, the press, and the prosecution working together to re-examine unsolved cases and bring a new perspective to these cases. And we're particularly going to look at cases involving minorities. That's such a big issue for
Mm.
all of us now. So obviously, starting with JonBenet Ramsey may not be the uh, roadmap for where we're going. But our second story is Nico Jenkins, who is a young man, that's now an old man, of a black man who was in prison. He's on death row, admitted to killing these four people. He did it, but he was mentally ill and he was never treated for his mental illness within inside the institution.
Mm.
It's really systemic and historic racism at its finest work within the system. It's terrible, terrible story, and I think it's important that we take a look at this and really understand why this is happening in America. I mean, I'm gonna, even in the JonBenet Ramsey case, there was some miss and inappropriate relations with the police department and the family and the uh, DA's office and the family, and that's just 25 years ago,
Yeah.
and we're still seeing this now. That we're still seeing, apathetic attitudes or inappropriate relationships or cover-ups. So, Michelle and Jared and I just bring a really unique perspective to this, and it really comes from a place of, we all. I mean, as a journalist, Michelle is an active detective, and Jared is one of the best homicide prosecutors in this country.
Wow.
It comes from a place of passion, really.
Can't wait. Can't wait.
Yeah. It sounds
Thanks.
really interesting. And you said it's
Thank you.
dropping, your first episode's dropping on
Yeah,
November
we're we're
25th.
we're first episode is going to drop November 25th, and we're going to drop an episode each week leading up to the December. The last episode drops December 23rd, which is 2 days before the 25th anniversary of her murder.
So
So
it's very strategic how you guys are laying this out. That's awesome.
yeah,
And then
thanks.
also what I heard you saying is that you're also going to make the direction of your show about minorities or people who might not necessarily have gotten the same coverage or press as other things. So I think it's great that you guys are starting out with JonBenet because that is something that a lot of people are invested in. And then it kind of keeps them on the hook to continue listening to the other stories you guys are presenting.
Yeah, I think you guys understand sort of the game of what we have to do. I have, starting with JonBenet Ramsey is going to pull the audience in, and people are obviously fascinated with those. And then we're going to show people, look, there's other big stories out there that deserve attention, that warrant attention. So let's take a look at these. And I think now is the time. I think particularly on the heels of Breonna Taylor and George
Yes.
Floyd and all these horrific things that we've seen happen. It's peeled back the layers of what's been happening for years. I mean, everyone's shocked and awed, at that. It was like, well, to your community, that's nothing new. I mean, that's what your community lives with. has
Mm.
lived with. And I'm aware of it too. I've seen it in the system, covering trials back from as early as court TV. I see the discrepancy within the system. And that was a big problem for me. I'm an outsider to this country, though. I'm from Canada. So I come, our views on racism are very, very different. So I come in with a different lens. And Michelle is a woman. She looks a police officer who, I see her fighting for the, getting
Mhm.
solved of minorities. We featured one of her cases on ID recently, and it was an incredible story. Of you guys probably know the story. He was an up and coming rapper, and he murdered his mother. And Kwame Wilson, and he got 99 years. That was Michelle's case. She solved that case and
Oh,
fought through
wow.
for a year. And she's told me how much she identified with the victim when she went into the victims to the crime scene. She's like, Steph, she had the same shoes as I did.
Oh
I
man.
saw the
Did he?
scarf she had. I recognized her knife holder.
Yeah.
She bought it at Target. Like, she really connected with the victim. And she said, because she looked at the knife holder that she had, she realized one of the paring knives was missing. And that was she was shot and stabbed, and that was one of the knives that she was
Jeez.
stabbed with.
I remember
So
that
much.
case. He murdered her for the insurance money. It was only like
Yeah, and
$75,000.
I kind of feel like I hate telling the story because the way I tell it on ID, you don't know until the end it was the son, but it's like but yeah, and he made the videos, and he used the
Man.
money and he threw the money out and to his fans so he can make more rap videos,
Whew.
you know,
Well, I
and it's like we felt I felt like, and it was really important. It's funny because I had to fight to get that story told, because it's like, black on black crime doesn't rate. It's like, who made up that narrative? And
yeah.
when I shot it, I said to Michelle, I said, look, it's going to be the number one. It's going to open the show. And she said, no way, there's no way. Because we don't shoot in order. You know what I mean? Like, we shoot.
Yeah.
And sure enough, I shot right before the pandemic started, guys. And then what happened was George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and they moved the episode to the premiere of the show. And the narrative became, we treat murders, black on black crime, as equal as we do white on white crime. So they were allowed to
Mm.
have that narrative. So I gave them that narrative.
Right.
All right.
Go
Well,
with that,
I
guys. Okay, but yeah, but it's a great story, and she's a she was she was a big member of her community, Yolanda, and she owned her own salon, and she was a community activist, and she deserved her story to be told as a
Yeah. Well,
victim.
that's a whole nother case that we need to.
yeah, and
That's
I
a whole nother
cannot
episode. So
wait.
Steph, we need to have you on to do multiple
Yeah, you need to come
Yeah,
back.
no
multiple
problem, guys.
shows. So I'm glad that we have that connection, because that's one thing that I love to hear that. And you did
Yeah.
bring up the black on black thing. It's just crime. I hate that they even say
Black
black
on
on. It's
black.
just
Yeah.
crime. So
Right, I know, but it's so weird for me because I would sit in these meetings with people, and I'm like, what? Who made up this story? Like, who said that black on black crime doesn't rate? Like, where did this false narrative come from? Like, I'm looking at the network people, like, you know, okay, so where'd you get that from? Like,
Yeah.
curious, because they think that because you're white and I'm in this room, I always want to have a podcast called In the Room, because it's like, when you're in the room with all these white people, they think they can say stuff, and I'm like, wait, no, you can't say that. Like,
And you
I'm
hold them to
sorry,
the
but that's not
carpet.
appropriate, you
Yeah.
know. So it's really interesting, just to be aware. Look, it's been a learning process for me, and but I feel a responsibility to advocate for, in
good.
that arena.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
If I'm
So
going
with
to do crime stories, I'm not going to make the boogeyman the black man. It's not. I'm not going to not show black victims.
exactly.
Because I'm
Exactly.
because I've been told that it doesn't rate. I'm not buying into that.
And we're not here for just ratings. We're here for justice, which is why I'm glad that you are on the podcast with the investigator as well as a prosecutor, because you guys are the people that run the show behind the scenes. You run investigations. You run what happens when somebody's missing or murdered. So, but what we're gonna do is go ahead and jump on into JonBenet. We're gonna talk about it a little bit, and if you have any additional details that you would like to add in, go ahead and go for it. Because, like I said, you're the expert on today's show when it comes to this particular case.
We got a
So
video.
we're gonna start with the short clip, and then we're gonna jump into the facts.
I wanna be a cowboy singer. meets one of America's most baffling true crime mysteries.
JonBenet Ramsey.
Now, 24 years after the murder of JonBenet Ramsey, a top investigator on the case is speaking from beyond the grave.
I thought this would be a fairly easy case. I thought it would be a slam dunk.
Detective Lou Smith kept video diaries on the case. They're seen for the first time ever in a 2020 special, The List, Who Killed JonBenet? I spoke to ABC's Amy Robach.
We are going to reveal what Lou Smith's thinking is as to who his top suspects are.
God bless America.
6-year-old pageant contestant JonBenet was found strangled in the family home in Boulder, Colorado, the day after Christmas, 1996. At first, suspicion fell on her parents.
It seemed as though the parents were probably involved in it. I even remember talking to my daughter. I kind of joked with her, saying that, if somebody did get in the house, it must have been Santa Claus coming down the chimney.
Patsy and John Ramsey fiercely denied they had anything to do with their daughter's death.
Please, if you know anything, I beg you
Actually, we
to
can.
call us. Call us.
Authorities later cleared the family of any involvement, and Smith became convinced.
All right, so I just wanted to kind of brush people up on what was going on with JonBenet's case in case they were not familiar. But just to talk about some more facts, this was on Christmas, the day after Christmas, 1996. JonBenet herself was born in 1990, and this case actually took place in Boulder, Colorado. One thing that I looked at when I was opening up this case again, because it was very near and dear to my heart since we were so close in age, is I did not know that there was a ransom note. I had no clue of the facts surrounding JonBenet's and death or anything like that because I was shielded from it as a child. I think we actually have a picture of the ransom note.
Yeah, it's super long, so you're not gonna be able to actually read any of it. But here's a picture of it.
Well, the ransom note was there, and they were asking for $118,000 for her return.
That's specific.
Yeah, very specific number. And her mother actually found that ransom note at the bottom of the staircase in their home. Do you have any insight, Step, on why they asked for $118,000? That's super weird.
Well, let me tell you this. $118,000 is the exact amount that John Ramsey received that year for his bonus.
What?
Okay.
Wow.
Who put information to that amount of money? We've had numerous handwriting experts review that note, and that note, every handwriting expert said, was written on a piece of paper from inside that home on a pad that belonged to Patsy Ramsey, and that handwriting resembled the handwriting of Patsy Ramsey. You got to look at the big picture of this, you guys. First of all, why does somebody say it's a kidnapping, leave a ransom note, but not take the actual person that they're kidnapping? Never has there been a case of a kidnapping where they didn't actually kidnap the person. Like, you've really got to just start at the beginning with this case. Normally a ransom amount of money would be, give me $1 million, give me, $5 million, give me, 100,000, but this specific amount, the exact amount that matched John Ramsey's bonus that year. Come on, guys. Let's just start to apply basic logic to this case. A young girl has never been murdered inside her home in America. I think there's no cases that even match this. Christmas Day, the intruder theory to me is preposterous. Patsy Ramsey, one thing that Michelle knows, Patsy Ramsey was, and you'll wait on this, was wearing the same clothes the next day that she had worn the night before, and had told investigators, oh yeah, I put the same clothes on. Okay. Of all my female friends, especially when you're trying to present that you are of a certain, level in society, you're going to tell me that you got up and put the same clothes on that you wore the night before when you're getting prepared to go on a flight to fly to, a Christmas event at your other home? Come on. That's a lie.
Steph, let me ask you this, because it sounds like you might think that Patsy has something to do with this. And from my research, they said that, they had, they weren't able to get any fingerprints from the note that was left. And also that her parents were excluded as people that were involved in this because no DNA came back that matched their DNA. all of the DNA matched someone from the outside. So do you think that Patsy might actually have something to do with this case?
100%, without a doubt.
Oh,
100%
and
without a doubt.
why is that? Let's talk about
Because
that.
it's if you go through the facts of the case and look at the history of that family, Burke Ramsey had a history of hitting his sister. He whacked his sister in the face with a golf club to the point where they had
Wow.
to take her and have some kind of surgery to fix her face.
Mm.
I
If
did
you
not
look,
know that.
yeah, if you look, and this is all documented. I'm not making this is not, I'm just the facts man. Okay. If you look at I've extensively looked at the crime scene photos, and one of the things when I was making my special 25 years ago, I met with one of the investigators that had exclusive footage, and I had to sit with him and an editor, and they were going through, the video was going through the house, and he said, "Tell me what you want." And I said, "Oh, I want the shot of the family room. I want this. Oh, and I want Burke's rooms because I noticed his bed. Each kid had two beds. I guess it's what white rich people do. Whatever.
Right, because we didn't
Yeah.
have that growing
Say
up.
what?
Each kid had two
Right.
beds. So the Burke's beds were not made. So I said, "Oh yeah, I want Burke's room because his beds weren't made." And remember, Burke always said, and they always said that they went to his room to get him. He never slept that night. He was not in those beds. And don't tell me that in the midst of all this madness that somebody decided to make Burke's beds up while they're like looking for a kidnapped child. If you also look at the way it was positioned, there was a bowl of milk with pineapple, which is absolutely
Yeah.
interesting to me because I don't do dairy, but that's just that bowl had two sets of fingerprints on it and the spoon, which was Burke Ramsey's and Patsy Ramsey's. I really believe that she came down, put her fingers in the bowl, ate the pineapple. Why do we know that? Because there's pineapple in her system from the autopsy.
Right.
And Burke was the one that was eating the pineapple. Her fingerprints weren't on the bowl. He whacked her with the flashlight, and then I think that her whatever, that the damages were so bad that Patsy concocted this incredible story too. It's sort of like, does Mama Bear lose both her children or save one? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then this is where the story goes off the rails, because the fact that I think she was a bit off of the rails anyways, because like, look at that, who makes up this, story about intruders and kidnappers? I mean, there was no kidnapping. People, we have to look at that. There was no kidnapping. The child was in the house.
So you don't think that her father had anything to do with it? You think it was just Patsy and JonBenet's brother that had a part in her dying?
That's a very good question. And here's what I think. They had a very unique relationship. They rarely spoke. They didn't even really sleep in the same room. Patsy does this all night. John wakes up and she tells him this story. I think John went down the rabbit hole as far as, I think there was a point when he realized that it wasn't true, but he couldn't turn back. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
you're too far
imagine
in.
me telling you this story, you and I are together, and I'm telling you, this is what happened. And you're like, oh my God, he's crazy. But it's also, that was his wife, and the media was there, and he stuck with the story. I think that she was alone in this, and I don't think he knew, but I think he figured it out, and it was too late to turn back.
So you mentioned the intruder theory. For people that are not that don't know about this, there were some windows that were open or left open that night at the Ramsey house, because I believe it was Christmas lights or something were running through the basement, but they left a window cracked. So some investigators believe that somebody might have gotten through the window, gotten into the home, and got JonBenet and ultimately killed her. One thing that I was confused about is that they said she had some stun gun marks or something like that on her body. Were you familiar with there being stun gun marks there? And if so, and if your theory is correct that Patsy as well as Burke had something to do with JonBenet's death, how would the stun gun have come into play?
The stun gun, it's a possibility. It's not a confirmed, you know what I mean? Like, it's like it could have been, and that's just not enough, to go on, that it could have been. I think, my partners, Michelle and Jared, and we're happy to jump back on the podcast again with you before it airs, would be Jared's so good on the evidence. I really focused on the trail of the false narrative and the misinformation. And Jarrett's really big on this, as is Michelle, on the evidence. But I think as far as the stun gun goes, it could have been. It may have. It was a possibility, but it wasn't 100%. You know, that was again. You know, you played a clip from Lou Smith, and I interviewed Lou before he passed away. I was one of the last people to have a conversation with him. He was in my story 5 years ago, and you know, I respect Lou and I love Lou, but it was like, you have to understand, Lou had his theory, and everything comes from that theory. Okay, so what we're presenting in this podcast is a witness who's never spoken in 25 years, who has
Wow.
a different perspective,
What?
and he doesn't have an agenda. He's a firefighter EMT who was inside that house. And, you know, I'll give you a hint. He noticed that it had snowed the night before. Okay. And he noticed that the coroner's car was there when he arrived. So why was the coroner's car there for a kidnapping? When they arrived at the house, okay, that's when the call changed that it was, and I sent you guys a clip. That's when the call changed that it was not a kidnapping, that it was a code 900, a possible dead person. That's a window of 2 minutes. So he gets there and notices, oh, that's funny. The coroner's car's there. It's covered in snow. It snowed the night before.
Oh, wow.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
So the
This is
coroner's
what-
car was there before anybody had actually been called. If that theory is true, that the coroner's car was filled with snow on the outside, and it was just in anticipation for what might have happened the next morning.
Following Dale, so Dale's time within the house is very narrow. Okay, he sees the body, and then, but it's not what he sees inside the house that's so important. It's what he sees outside the house. Then this story is so crazy. Then I'm going to tell you guys because it doesn't, you know, it's going to get released anyway. So let's just talk it through.
Oh,
Then-
man.
Oh, wait. So you're dropping some exclusive stuff right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah, why not? Guys, coffee before coffee. So then what happens is Dale leaves, you know, goes about his business. He gets promotion. He's really good. You know, he's been at this point 10 years, gets a promotion. He's at the new place, the new fire hall. Now the story's blown up. He had no idea that what he was walking into. Remember, he's just getting a call, going to this house. He doesn't know it's the JonBenet Ramsey house, you know.
Yeah.
And now the story's blown up, and he's sitting there. He goes, "Oh my God, I was there." One of a female firefighter, female employee says, "You were?" Well, I know one of the investigators. She tells the investigator that Dale was there. They didn't even know he was in the house. All of a sudden, Linda Arndt, the lead investigator, calls him in for questioning. And as she's questioning him, she's shutting the recorder off and on. Click.
Excuse
Let
me?
me shut this off. Yeah, Michelle and Jarrett have one of our whole podcasts is devoted to that, and how preposterous that is. What was it that she was trying to avoid him saying? Why did she tell him not to ever speak about what he witnessed? Why did she specifically shut the recording off when he was talking about the coroner's car?
Now, is she still alive? Because I know Lou, and we
Yes.
have a couple of pictures of Lou. We
it-
know Lou
is this
passed
him?
away in 2000. Yeah, he
Lou
passed
away. Yeah,
away in 2010.
Yeah, and I think
And
I
Lou
should-
was an investigator in the cases. Well, he was hired to come in and investigate
Right.
about 3 months or so after the incident occurred.
Right. And Lou, you know, you have to remember, and I really want people to pay attention to this. Lou is operating from a perspective and agenda. Okay. And that's where Michelle and Jarrett, we don't have a dog in this fight. You know, we're not paid by the family. We're not in bed with the
Mhm.
investigators. So we're coming at it with open minds, right? Clear eyes, clean eyes. And it's really a solvable case. I mean, when you break it to Lou had, and bless his heart, may he rest in peace, he had an agenda. He's looking at it through a specific lens. You can't do that in an investigation. You have to be open-minded and look at it from all sides. When you go through the facts of this case, it's really, really, really not that complicated to solve.
I have a question. So
Yeah.
let's just say the son let's just say he did it, right? And the mom covered it up. Is
Okay.
there, and then Kyla, you can answer this question because you're a lawyer as well, but like he was a minor, right?
Mhm.
Is there any issues, like let's say statute of limitations? Can he be held responsible now as an older adult if it was solved, or since he was a minor, did it Not did it fall on the parents for covering it up?
Mm.
They'll never get that information out of
Yeah, well, I mean, I
Patsy.
don't know the laws.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, Step. Go ahead.
No, Patsy, as we know, Patsy's deceased. So
Yeah,
any
she passed
information,
away.
Oh, she died.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even
yes,
know that.
yeah, the mom's passed away, so she's taken any information with her to the
To the
grave.
grave, yeah.
So the only person who was there is Burke.
Yeah.
The father was asleep. So Burke, will Burke? I don't know if you saw the Dr. Phil interview with him, but he's a strange bird.
I can
You know,
believe it.
yeah.
As
So,
far as statute of limitations are concerned, I'm not sure what Colorado's laws are, but I know here in Florida, if you commit a crime that, would be considered an adult like crime, you can be charged as an adult here. Whether that's murder, whether that's getting behind the car and you're 7, 8 years old and you accidentally killed somebody getting behind the car, we will charge you as an adult here in a heartbeat. But as
Jeez.
far as the statute of limitations are concerned for Colorado, I'm not 100% sure. But I want to say though that when I was a kid, I always wondered if the brother was the one that did it, because I have a brother and I know
He hit you with golf clubs and stuff.
he never did
Stun
that.
guns.
He never did that. But when you have siblings, they
mhm,
get you to a level that
mhm,
sometimes just pisses you off
mhm.
sometime. And I'm just like, I
Right.
was always on
I was a
on
biter.
him.
I was a biter.
And look at that situation with her. Like even those images you guys showed at the top there, those are so disturbing to me. She was the center of the attention of that family. It was
Mm,
all about her. She was this. I mean, that I just who does that to their daughter? I'm sorry, people, but I have a big issue with dressing her up, strutting her around. And Patsy was living her dream, her
through her.
failed dream as a failed beauty contestant through JonBenet.
Yeah.
And but there's facts that we do know. Burke did not write the Ramsey note. Ransom note. It was not in his hand. He wasn't capable of writing the ransom note. So, to answer your question, there will never be charges brought in this case. I never will never see it, but we can certainly look at that image. It's just so disturbing.
Yeah, it is.
It really is. And yeah, so
Man, one thing that I thought was
crazy.
pretty crazy was police officers that did respond to the house, they never went down to check the basement where she ultimately was found. And it's
Well,
like, how do
hello.
you do that? Yeah, you go to a house, you go and even from the movies that we watch, you see officers go in every single room to secure the premises before anything else is done. And in here, that just was not done at all. And ultimately, she was found in the basement. There was a cord wrapped around her neck. There was some sort of possible sexual violation in this case, from what I was reading. And she was found in a white blanket. So I know you mentioned earlier, Step, that this is one of the first cases that you had where a kidnapping did not actually occur. A ransom note was found, but no kidnapping had taken place. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because I was a little murky on the details, whether she was taken and then because they called the police, they killed her and put her back in the house, or had she been
Absolutely.
down there the entire time?
She'd been down there the entire time. And how does the father, upon the orders of Linda Art, tells him to go check the house again, stumble upon the dead body of his daughter and bring her up to the base? I mean, as I explain it to you guys, do you hear how preposterous it sounds? Like,
Yeah.
how big was that house? It wasn't that big. I've been there. You and I, the three of us could have gone through and looked at every single room. What's behind this door? I don't know. Let's kick it open and find out. We're looking for a missing girl. Oh, the door's locked. No, there's probably not anybody in there. Let's just keep going. I mean, really?
Wow, that seems
I
like
know. Like, this is how ridiculous this whole thing is. I mean, it was just a failed police investigation. I think a cover up, and I think that there was, you have to look at, and you mentioned something earlier that I think is important, that the Ramseys were exonerated from this crime. Again, why? They had an
Mm,
inappropriate relationship with the DA's office. They were in and out of there talking to them
mm,
all the time. So now that we're coming forward with this new information in my podcast, that there was a possibility that they had an inappropriate relationship with the coroner. Remember, this is Boulder, Colorado. These are all wealthy white people.
yeah.
It's very possible that they all went to the same country club, women shopped at the same dress shops, and went, and it's not that far-fetched. And you have to remember, and Dale himself, our first firefighter, said to me, the most shocking line in the podcast is, well, who better to have cover up the crime than the person who's investigating the crime?
Mm.
And he's talking about the coroner. or someone from the
Man.
coroner's office. Why were they there hours before there was a reported kidnapping? Hours before her body was found.
So
It's a
Steph,
Yeah.
so Steph, break it down. So what do you actually think happened? Do you think, because from I didn't know any of this about the coroner, so my
Yeah.
mind is spinning right now. I'm thinking that brother killed her on accident, told mom. She concocts this whole entire plan to make it seem like this happened. She calls her wealthy friends, who's probably the coroner,
Mm-hmm.
and he comes over there, or she comes over there, and they tell her what she needs to do to get away with it.
in a nutshell. I think that that's a good breakdown of what it has. I think if something think about it, if something really bad happened to one of the three of us, think about it. What are you going to do? You're going to call people and be like, I fucked up. Like, pardon me, my
Mm-hmm.
leg.
Well,
Like,
I'm a lawyer. I get
a
those
lot of
calls all the time.
I called Kyla yesterday and said that.
well, you guys can put me on that list now. I'm there for you. Um, and you call people who you trust to help you deal with the situation that you believe that they could deal with. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense to
It
you?
does.
And you're not going to call, I'm not going to call somebody who I don't think can handle, like if I say I got a DUI, just say, it happened. I'm calling Jared or I'm calling Michelle because
Mm-hmm.
they know, all right, Steph, look, don't say this, do this,
Right.
this, like they know how to handle that situation. I'm not going to call, my friend Bob or Dan, then, because they don't know what they're doing. So you've got to look at it. One thing we haven't looked into is that circle of friend. Like what is there,
Mm.
who was that person? What is that relationship? We haven't looked at that. We're just allowing Dale to tell the story and lay out the facts here,
Man.
and present another part of this mystery. And we're very careful about it because we realize that we're now going to become part of the fabric of the story. On this date, this podcast was released, and this witness who was inside the house, who we've confirmed, we've got the paperwork that he was there, witnessed this, saw something else that no one else has seen, and thought here's the most important thing, and I think you guys will get this. It's bothered him for 25 years. It's stuck with him. It's
Mm.
haunted him for all these years. And you guys all know when something sticks with you like that, there's something wrong,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And this is a guy that has an impeccable record. They're going to try to drag Dale through the coals. We've already done. Dale has 25 years of service as a firefighter, AMT, and an impeccable clean record. So, we're not going to go there with like, oh, he made it up. He was a drunk. He was this. He was that. No, we've vetted all that. So,
Intentional incompetence.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you this, Step, because this is Boulder, Colorado. I don't know anybody who lives there aside from whatever happened with this particular case. I don't know anything about that town. What was it that you thought? What was it that you think drew America to this particular story in this particular region?
Oh, I know.
it's such a good question, and it's I really call it the perfect storm, which is actually
Mm.
one of the titles of our podcast. Look at it. Look at it. I want to give you the big picture. I think this is really important to understand. Remember, 25 years ago, cable television launched. Okay, we are now seeing the launch
I
of
feel
streaming.
old.
Okay,
Oh,
I don't, girl.
yes.
Listen, don't even start. Don't even get me started. You're a lot younger. Both of you are a lot younger than I am. So remember, we had just. It was on the heels of O.J. Simpson.
Yeah.
O.J. Simpson trial fueled this machine, this 24-hour news cycle. This watching the car, the white car go down the white Bronco, the chase, watching the trial. Then we went away. Then it was ding, 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 it was Christmas. It was a beauty queen. So,
Mm.
when I put together a story, the first thing the networks ask you, what are they archival? It was the perfect storm of the white wealthy family that's really easy to hate because the beauty queen daughter, the videotapes of her being, the mystery of the murder, and like I said, a young girl it's a murder inside the home. It was the perfect. It's all those elements, and the unsolvability, and the parents came out swinging in the media, and the media went nuts. So it's like it was just you know. But you have to ask yourself, and I always ask myself this question: if there had been a black family, would we have had the same attention to this
That's
case?
my question.
Nope.
Yeah. That's my exact question because, like I said, who lives in Colorado? Nobody lives up there. You know what I'm saying? At
Well,
least
I'll tell
nobody
you
that I
this:
know.
the parents of that young black child would have been in jail right now for that murder.
Exactly. Hands
Yeah,
down. Hands
hands
down.
down, hands down. And they probably would have locked up the brother too.
Man.
Right,
And that
rounded
was
him up.
Yeah, and that's
For
another thing
two
too
days.
is the disproportionate number of cases that are shown the light is shown on if they're not a person of color. Because I'm pretty sure that there were other young ladies that had passed away or young 6-year-olds like that that had gone missing or had been murdered around that time too that just didn't get that same coverage. But
Hmm.
like you said, it was the perfect curated story that could, be brought to light for everybody, especially on the
Hmm.
heels of OJ. Let me ask you
Yes.
this though. Oh, go ahead.
No, no, no. I think it's important to understand that, that, the cable television news aspect of it. And, that was sort of a part of our podcast. We pulled that out because it was a little bit off point, but it's, again, it was this beast had been released, this cable TV and, the 24-hour news cycle, and it needed to be fed a story, and they were looking for a great story. And here it was. I mean,
Mhm.
if you look at it, it's all the perfect elements.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you when you're making the documentaries, when you're producing shows, and when you have your podcast, what is your overall purpose of doing those things? And what duty do you feel you owe the public to present these stories?
I think that's a great question. I think it's two things. I think that there's a story that we're always told to believe, or that we know, and I always believe that there's another part to the story, and I always believe there's a couple of things. It's such a complex question and a complex answer. I think that there's more to the story than we know of. You know, when covering trials, there's so much information that's bargained away about what can and can't be said
Mhm.
at the trial, what the jury doesn't get to hear, which I always find so frustrating. If look, if I think you should know the good, the bad, and the ugly. Lay it all out there. There's that, and I also feel like oftentimes, um, sorry, I got a helicopter coming over, military helicopter. Here we
Oh
go.
wow.
Yeah. But anyways, the other thing is oftentimes the victims they get lost in the conversation. They
Mm.
get talked around and about, and the case becomes about the killer. And
Mhm.
I'm really big on making sure that it's a victim story gets told, and the why, and what's the takeaway. What can we learn from this? Um, and I really think it's also about, my biggest thing is uncovering the what needs to, failures in the police department, in an honest way, like I've had people sit there and say, yeah, we made mistakes, and like let's have a frank conversation about that so we can make an improvement on it and make it better, you know. So I think that there's, to me, retelling a story is not interesting. I have no interest in retelling JonBenet Ramsey from the perspective, going through the suspects and going through Lou's theory. I would never have done this if it wasn't for Dale, and if it wasn't for the fact that we have information that we think is vital. I mean, Jarrett's livid as a prosecutor. Jarrett's like, why did they not know about this person? Why was this person never, he wanted to know about him. What's his perspective? There's a whole new angle here that needs to be taken a look at now, you know.
Mm.
Why was the coroner's car there? What was going on? Maybe there's a reasonable answer to it. We don't know because it's never been looked into. You
Man.
know, that's what I like about what I do.
Yeah, you're definitely giving a different perspective and like you said, putting everything out there so that people can make their own judgments on what happened. I cannot wait to listen to this podcast.
Oh, thanks.
Man. Well, we're going to go to the next segment and wind on down. It's called the Big Subpoena Moment. This is usually a moment in the show where I talk about something that's really bothering me, something that pisses me off. And the thing that has pissed me off right now is the vandalization of the George Floyd statue. I just don't understand why people do what they do. There was a person that came by apparently on a skateboard and threw silver paint on this statue. And so I just don't understand people nowadays. And I know we're having Confederate statues come down as they should. But when we're memorializing people who have died in this country at the wrongdoing of our own hands, and we're actually uplifting people who are heroes now, and just to have things vandalized, I think this happened maybe a day or so after the statute was even put in place.
Statute wasn't even finished being set in. Like, it was almost immediate.
So I think they're looking for that person. They got camera footage and whatnot, but it's just very sad to me that things like this happen across our country.
We live in a divisive culture where a lot of people believe that insurrection that happened on January 6th was a friendly assembly of people. So let's just operate from there. And we
Didn't
have a lot
3 people die?
Yeah, people died.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And that we've got the former man who was president honoring one of the people, her death, as as a hero of this country. It's just disgusting to me.
Yeah.
So, but we wonder why this kind of stuff happens. Like, when is enough enough?
Yeah.
When is enough enough?
Well, I'm grateful that we have people like you that come down, especially being from another country, and kind of have a different take on what's going on. But if you're flabbergasted at what's going on, I can only imagine how other people see the United States as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I just want people to understand just my personal lenses. Canada was a country that we rescued slaves. We didn't enslave people. So that's embedded in the mentality of the way where we were brought up. We were the country that on 9/11, we took in planes. We took in, recently we took in, we take refugees. That's our mentality. So to come here and see this, this deep-rooted historic systemic racism that exists in this country, I mean, to me, it's got to get real ugly before it's going to get better.
I agree with you on that.
And it's time to address it and try to move forward.
Well, you're definitely doing your part, Steph. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Thanks.
I can't wait until your podcast drops, with the first episode being about JonBenet Ramsey. How can the people find you? What are your social media handles if anybody wants to come and look at some of your work?
Yeah, I mean, social media, social media is a whole issue to me. It's like I try to avoid it, but you can't. I mean, honestly, even though the issues with Facebook is a good platform for me because it's a way for me to really reach a lot of people, and especially find people that are involved in cases. So, Instagram is Steph W. Watts. At Twitter is Steph Watts. I'm on Facebook. Don't be sending me no inappropriate messages because you'll get blocked because I get them all the time. Come right or stay away. You know what I mean? Like, I'm happy to, a lot of people send me stories and pictures and we look into stuff that way. And, I appreciate you guys doing this. I think it's great. And I gave you guys a lot of good stuff. So, and then our podcast, anywhere where you can get podcasts, we're going to be on Apple, Spotify, all on November 25th while y'all eating Thanksgiving dinner. Listen to the first episode and you'll hear our show's case by case. And this one's called Solving JonBenet.
Murder in Turkey.
Yes.
Murder in Turkey. Together. That's a good podcast, guys. Murder in Turkey. Maybe we should do that one. Murder in Turkey.
Man, listen.
I don't know. Good stuff.
Great having you today, man. I appreciate it, and come on back whenever you want to come back.
Hey, I might people know how to.
Yeah. My people know how to reach out to me already. On Instagram is Kai_LYFE, Kai Life, and till the next time, we're gonna take the music on out. We'll let the music take us on out. Great having you today, Steph.
Dance off, Steph.
Thank you.